we're trying out this, like how I said, the old streamer angle. I don't know how I'll like it after I rewatch this episode. But Spencer, thanks for being here. Thanks for being the guinea pig podcast to try out this camera view.
Yeah.
If this is the one that goes viral, boom, we'll know.
We're gonna know why.
Yeah,
it wasn't because of this. It was my camera.
It's a wicked combo of obviously Spencer and then the camera angle. But yeah, hey, thank you for doing this. Thank you for agreeing to do this. I got a little bit of a time crunch. You got like about an hour and a half, but I feel like that's more than enough time to hang out, have a little chit chat, and just catch up and talk.
Yeah. No, I'm excited to be here after you told me about what you're doing with kind of broadening Live Aloha Volleyball Academy. I was like, this is something I want to be a part of. So I feel privileged to be in such an exclusive company. I just watched the first one that you put out this last Friday, because we're recording this like right after you just started advertising. And I was like, this is so cool. I'm going to get to know so many more people. And so kind of like with what I'm doing with Dismantle and everything, like I was just like, I want to broaden my network and like learn about these people doing cool things. And so your first guest, I was like, oh my gosh, like it was super cool. So
she's so great. Janessa Mass, she's so great. I'm sure she will be a repeat guest on this YouTube podcast episode thing, whatever the heck I'm calling it. Well, before we get to talking about Dismantle, I noticed your hat. That's the Arizona Diamondbacks.
Arizona Diamondbacks.
You just moved. Wait, and let's take a second to appropriately shout out the drip. One, the glasses, the classic Spencer glasses. I also have a pair now of, I mean, they're not exactly like, but when I wear them, these are my blue light glasses, I feel like I'm channeling the Spencer a little bit. Then we got the Live Aloha shirt, classic. It's not one, I was gonna say one of a kind, but it's not one of a kind. It's like, it's a Live Aloha classic. I rep it. And then we got the Arizona hat. So I cannot recall. Did you grow up in Arizona, but you just moved to Arizona? Give us the life update. You just moved.
Well, no. So I was born and raised in San Diego, in California, in Southern California, and my grandmothers live down in Phoenix, and then my parents moved up here. So I'm in the mountains in Prescott. I'm working in Flagstaff and going up to northern, like around Northern Arizona University and back. And so I'm up here right now, just with the COVID and everything happening. I moved here from Portland, like Vancouver, Southwest Washington, in July. And after some doors closed with the school district I was working at in Battleground, it just felt like the time to do something different. And I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing, but I know I'm doing something. And it's nice being close to the family, especially with COVID and everything going on. We just spent a holiday with my grandmothers and my parents, so that's super cool. My brother is still in Hawaii, and so he wasn't able to come back. But I'm hoping, because I had to postpone my trip from February, I'm hoping to go this summer and maybe stay there for a couple weeks. But yeah, so Northern Arizona now. Just came from Portland. Before that, I was in California. So Arizona, I like Northern Arizona because of the climate, the snow. It's kind of similar to Southwest Washington, but definitely not Arizona native, or would I plan on like living the rest of my life here. But I do enjoy it for what it is right now.
This is probably just a chapter in your life. It sounds like this is just part of the section of the story. Definitely not the ending or the beginning. Cool. Well, and so you started this awesome, I'm not even going to call it a coffee company. You started this awesome, you began this mission that perhaps you've been on for a long time. Part of it represents itself in this Dismantle Coffee Company. But before that, I mean, I don't know if you want to talk about or illuminate some of the like the work that you were doing, and you had mentioned that school district closed down, and You don't have to mention, talk about any of that, but
Yeah.
if you wanted to talk about it, you could.
Sure. So my background, I've always wanted to work. So in high school, I created this online blog on a Tumblr account back when
Yeah.
it was popular. And I used to like try to go and counsel people who were feeling suicidal or depressed. And it was just like super thrilling. As soon as I did it, I was like, this is what I want to do. And so I went to school, undergrad and grad school, Southern California. Got my master's in counseling, started counseling youth in the community who were like didn't have a home to live in, who fell through the cracks, didn't have any family, and really loved that. So I moved up to Pacific Northwest, started doing that just because I wanted to change. I got sick of the 70 degree weather every day and sunny. I mean, people get upset. They're like, why would you leave San Diego? Probably why the same people ask you why you live in Hawaii.
Yes.
And I just needed to change. And so I took a road trip up to Portland, and I started doing that up there. I was helping kids after they would leave the hospital after a suicide attempt or something like that. I'd work with them to kind of reacclimate them to their homes, make sure that they didn't get back, because usually they're going back to the same situation that sent them to the hospital. And so I kept working with kids like downstream, and I was like, man, I'm getting these kids like right before they go over the waterfall. And I was like, I need to figure out a way to get involved sooner. And so I was like, well, what do most kids have to do and go to? I was like, schools. If we were to find a way to get to the schools, they spend so much time with teachers. If we gave teachers the tools to recognize kids who are struggling sooner, get them referred to me or some mental health person, get them into counseling before they go to the hospital, I was like, that's going to save a lot of people a lot of time, effort, lives. And so I was doing that for a while. Schools are interested in academics, though. They're not as interested in mental health. I got told that very many times. This is a school. This isn't a hospital. This isn't a day treatment program. And so I didn't get a lot of backing in the schools. And so I was like, man, I just need to find another way to get kids involved in counseling, regardless of insurance. Like, kids need help like sooner than later. How do we cut down some of those walls and barriers? And so I think part of that was, so that was my journey. And then part of meeting Margie up in P&Q.
Big time. I am remiss to not mention our connection. Shout out Margie Brammer. Probably the first time you've been shouted out on this podcast, but it won't be the last. Thank you.
She is responsible for a lot of the turn, and a big supporter of Dismantle, as we talk more about that. But she, super cool person. I'm sure, I have no doubt, like you said, she's going to be talked about, if not like be a co-host or something, just everything she's doing in her life. But anyway, we met in P&Q. She was like, hey, I'm going to be going to leave Wave, I think she was at, in Hillsboro. And she's like, got to know this cool guy, Kyle. And so he's telling me about what you're about. And I really believe like volleyball can be that place, or sports can be that place. It doesn't have to be like this formal counseling office where we're talking, because I think like through Lava, like more kids have been helped than kids I've worked with in like the school systems and stuff. Just like having like a caring, consistent adult who's showing up for you, who's a safe place to go to when you're feeling like you need somebody to talk to. And so then I sort of like developed a Dismantle out of that, which we could talk about more, but that was kind of like where things were up until I got to Arizona. And I think part of it was like figuring out Lava and helping me see counseling can occur in a different setting, and it doesn't have to just be in the school or in the hospital.
Sure. And you were probably far along in the concept that was Dismantle at the point of when you called me about it, because you were chatting about this idea, like how you're saying, right? Like, does counseling have to happen like in this setting that we're all used to? Like, you had started to mention this idea of like, oh, could we do like almost like a coffee shop where people would, it's not like they would not know, right? Like, why am I being counseled when I'm just trying to get a cup of coffee? Like, I swear, like you would know that part of the deal was like, you'd almost walk in, right? And almost like there was this one-on-one barista area, right? Like it wasn't like just one, okay, here's where the coffee is made. It was sort of like, almost like these little pods, and you could go there, get a cup of coffee, get some counseling, essentially. And please, at any point, like stop me and be like, that's actually not the right way to, that's not the, don't say that anymore. Or like, we don't say that just because I'd much rather like learn and be educated versus like, you said like 17
Sure.
things that you probably should like mute or whatever. But anyway, so the idea that you had, right, was like, okay, could we shift the setting and therefore paradigm of like counseling? How can I help? Right. And then so the idea, which I thought was sick, was like, oh, like this coffee shop where like, the person making the coffee was a counselor, which was, I thought was sick. Right. Which I mean, takes all kind of twists and turns and whatever, but it ended up being, well, at this current time in our juncture, it's Dismantle Coffee Company. And so, my dog just walking. Oh yeah, she's right here.
Yeah. guest star.
Guest star. This is probably also the first time that Lilo gets to be on the podcast as well. Woohoo! Yeah.
Good timing.
Good timing. Great timing, Lilo. I am trying to find my train of thought. Dismantle Coffee. Okay, so part of did Dismantle only start after you moved, or was it like how are those? How can we bridge that gap there?
Yeah, so a part of this like mentor program through my undergrad school, and I had a student I was mentoring who was graduating for a degree in psychology from San Marcos, and she was like, "Hey, we're just like trying to figure out what she wants to do next," and then I pitched this idea of this therapeutic coffee shop, as you
So sick.
illustrated, and she was like, "Well, why don't you do that?" Like right in like December, I think, of the year before I moved here. So like last, I guess, a year ago. And she was like, "You should do that." And I was like, "Yeah, I probably should." And so this door closed at Battleground, and I was like, "Okay, well, if I'm gonna do this, like, this hasn't been done." I tried to figure out if it's been done before. I haven't been able to find anything. And if anybody's watching this and they're like, it has been done before, I'd love to know how to do it properly. And so I was like, okay, I need to start. And it's so hard because I like to get pulled in so many different directions. And it was like, oh, this is a good idea. This is a good idea. And so I was like, well, where am I going to get the coffee from? And so then I went on this other tangent where I learned about the inequity in the coffee industry, similar to like chocolate, in terms of like how farmers don't own their farms, and a lot of them have this like indentured servitude where they sell their beans, but everybody in the world, all these like rich white well-entitled men, like agree to just pay like a couple dollars for a bag of beans. And so it's called the C note, is like the coffee like gold standard, if you will. Like everybody agrees they're going to pay $2 for these beans. And so as a result, these farmers who don't have a lot of business training often get the short end of the stick. And so the people kind of doing the middle person work end up selling the beans for $2, giving them what they get. And they don't always end up getting to make very much of a profit despite all of this effort and stuff. And so what is really cool is in Hawaii, they do have, obviously we have more labor laws and stuff here. They do have a pretty good system. And so I was like, oh, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to find native indigenous Hawaiians. I'm going to find like women owned farms. And so then I like go and start doing this research, and it's like mostly white men and like a couple Japanese men who own these farms. And I was like, no. I was like, well, what am I going to do? And so I ended up getting connected with Ralph. He guessed on, he's a Black man who owns the coffee company that I get to work through. And so he has the relationships there. He's actually from Baltimore, and he is one of like very few Black men involved in the coffee industry. It's very white, super white. And so I was like, well, at least if I can do the best that I can to do research and try to forge those relationships to find people who are either women, people of color, indigenous, like that would be a good place to start. So at least have that intention behind it. And so after I started doing that, I was like, well, that's in Hawaii. Like, I'm going to try to start finding other farmers, other places in the world, and building those relationships. But I don't know if you ever do this, but it's like you start with like this idea and then you end up with like this like idea and you're like, it's just so big. It's starting
Oh,
from a good
crazy.
place, but it's like, where do I go from here, you know?
Yeah. It's like it's like an Iron Man where he like takes the thing and he like throws it up and it's just like boom, it just like blows up huge. Like he's like, oh my God, what's going on? Yeah, okay, so the like this, I mean, I got to know, say his name again.
Ralph Gaston.
Ralph Gaston. I did get to see him as I was perusing your website before this. I was like, oh, that's awesome, you know, especially he's a person of color too. He's from Baltimore. I was like, oh, that's so crazy. So what you kind of glossed over what I think is like a huge point, but like you made a very intentional decision to be like, I'm not gonna get like the cheapest beans. I'm not, there's a pretty clear not shift in value, but there's like a core for you that most businesses surround. The core of it is like, okay, we got to be a profitable business, but you kind of glossed over this what I think is a huge core of what Dismantle Coffee Company is like, you are doing this almost, I mean, for lack of a better word at this point, to dismantle the coffee. You know, I don't know that you're like, I'm Spencer and I'm going to dismantle the entire coffee industry. But, you know, in some ways, you know, you're setting out on this, your intentions are to dismantle the status quo, perhaps, right? Mm-hmm. And just like, in a way where it's like, I think this is how this should be done. So I'm going to do it that way. And I'm not going to take no for an answer. I don't know.
And if people, I genuinely believe, because the coffee and we also have Navajo tea that's made by a Navajo farmer in northern Arizona, or excuse me, like western New Mexico in the Navajo Nation. And I just like my guiding light through all this is like, people need to make a living wage. People, products we purchase need to be like as harmless to the environment or as close to that as we can get as possible. So we use reusable like boxes, or bags are biodegradable. And then if I like make decisions out of this place not looking at cost, then I think that I'll have the best product that I feel comfortable offering the world, and people will, even if they have to spend more money, know exactly where that money's going. Because when you purchase any product from us, I give you a receipt showing like where to the penny, like where everything went, from like the cord that is used to tie around the bag, to like the wax stamp on the back of the coffee bag, to like the beans itself and how much did the farmer make, because I want people who spend money with us to know like this is where every penny went, because that's the product that I would like to buy in the world. Is like, how much more honest would our marketplace be if you could see like where all of the money goes to, instead of like, oh, I paid $3 for this, but like I don't know how much like the person making the tomato sauce who like grew the tomatoes makes, like maybe they get 5 cents, then maybe I don't want to buy that. But like, if I know that the farmer's getting most of it, then wonderful. And like at the end of the day, like any of the profit that doesn't go to people ends up going into a fund to fund free counseling for youth who don't have access to it. And so that was kind of like connecting back to my initial passion, which was probably better addressing the question that you asked. Like, what are we going to do until I'm in a brick and mortar and like in a coffee shop, when I can make this therapeutic coffee shop happen? And for now, like I'm doing COVID counseling with kids for free, like all over, and the money goes there. So I don't end up like making money as much as I end up like paying for my time to support as many kids as we can. So
yeah, that makes sense. That's something I really, really loved when I've only put one order in for Dismantle. I've gotta hit up that weekly or monthly subscription. I gotta do it. But when I did get my order from you, which is very fast, I was, I don't know, I was blown away. Like that just seems such a weird thing to say, but I was like genuinely, maybe connecting to something that you had said. I was like, this is how it should be. Like, why? What the heck? I loved getting to see that right in front of my own eyes. Like every single, like you said, down to the penny. This is what your money went to, and it was sort of like I was almost taken back. Like, oh, because how often do you just open up a thing and you just throw you're like, whatever, I don't care. But then luckily being your friend and connected to you, I was like, oh, I was so excited to just open everything and figure out what was inside. And that was like a huge part of like, I was very impressionable piece of that experience was like opening that and like reading it, like, whoa, like that's crazy that like this guy, this farmer is getting this much. Like,
yeah.
But then when you say it out loud, it feels so embarrassing to be like, yeah, like shouldn't we do that already? Like, I don't know. Yeah. Was that did you steal that from somewhere, or did you just be like, I just think that's just how it should be done, so I'm just gonna do it?
I was like, well, people are paying like, I don't know, close to, so when it's on sale, it's like $19 a bag, but people are paying like close to $20 for this coffee. And I was like, but why? And then like, I knew why, because like the farmer needed to get paid. Or we needed to pay for counseling, or like, and I was like, well, why don't I just show them that? Like, why don't I just, because like, what do I have to hide? It's not like I'm making a ton of money off this. I have no intention of doing so. So why don't I just communicate that to them? And so it felt weird at first because I was like, can you do that? Like, can you just show people this?
Some weird thing that I don't know. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So I started doing it, and I was like, well, for some people it's meaningful, and for other people they're like, you know what, I just want good coffee or good tea. And that's why we also strive to do, like, we're not just putting out like this pity product, but like we want to create, and maybe not ironically, like this Hawaiian beans, like they're the best coffee that I've ever had in my life. And so I was like, man, if people are going to be getting a quality product and getting it for a good reason, then like that's everything that I want to get behind,
Yeah, absolutely. So you have like a coffee, I don't know, I'm gonna butcher it, like a coffee strainer, like a coffee maker on your site. Is that like, you're like, yeah, this is also the optimal way, or like, or is it like a convenient way? Because I almost bought it. I was like, you know what, I should just put it in a huge order right before the podcast starts and see what Spencer says. But like, I did genuinely, selfishly wanted to ask about that coffee strainer that you have on there. Is it just one that you're like, yeah, this one's great, like, people should use this one?
Yeah, so the AeroPress is like a better version of a French press, and it's all made in the US. It's made sustainably, and so that's what geared me toward it first. And then I tried it because I wasn't going to put it on without trying it, because usually I'll just make it in like a coffee maker like everybody else. And I was like, oh, this is pretty nice. And if I'm traveling or something and I'm on the go, like this is an easy way to get it. So my main intention for selling it was because it was made in the US, and I can't find coffee makers that are made sustainably and people are earning a fair wage, because it's not like just farmers, but like if I'm going to sell something on my site, whether it's the twine that goes around it, like I need to know that the people making it were paid fairly. And it's so challenging because it's not done. Like, you just don't know. And so it takes a lot of research. But at the end of the day, I feel good about selling it. And hopefully when people buy it, they can be like, oh, okay, I can trust when I buy something from Dismantle, like people who are making these products are getting what they earned.
I want to go two different directions, I think. So I'm going to say them both, so then maybe you can choose which way we go first.
Okay.
If you're willing, like, I'd love to like hear a sneak peek about like how it is to work with the farmers that you do actually work with, both the Navajo tea farmers and then the coffee farmer in Hawaii. Like, I don't know people who like work with coffee farmer. Like, I don't know, like that just seemed like, hey, what's, you know, like what's the
Yeah.
behind the scenes of
That'd
that?
be-
That's not, yeah, it sounds super cool and, you know, personable, like to be like, yeah, like let's not only talk about these farmers, let's talk about them. How does it go? And then the other direction is like, you seem, I've been trying to figure out how to say this, and I'm not going to run away from it. I'm going to just bulldoze my way right through it.
Okay.
It just seems so incredibly on trend for any individual um, to be woke. I don't know how to say it other than
Yeah.
that.
No, I feel that.
And at this point, like woke makes me want to barf because
Mhm.
I think it's like, I guess what I should say, disclaimer, in my own mind, when I'm hearing woke, it's just like I'm just going to reside in the safety of the current societal like
Mhm.
verbiage and vocabulary, and I'm just gonna say those things, and I'm just gonna echo those things around me, so that I'm not like outcasted from the herd, right?
Mhm.
What I'm hearing from you and what I'm literally seeing on your website and the work that you're doing, you're like actually doing that. Like you're backing up being woke, I guess, which is like a weird, that's why I didn't want to say it. It was like, you know, but like for you to just be like, this, you know, anyone can just talk about it, but to like be about it and to like do stuff, that's another level. So what I was trying to get to there was like, were you just born like that, Spencer? Or like, did
Mm.
you have to work through stuff to get to that point where you're just like, look, like you're saying, like, I need to know that people are getting paid a fair wage. Like, it's easy to post a TikTok where people are like, yeah, I think this is so wrong. But like, you like literally are putting your twine where your receipts are. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I don't know which way you want to go first, but I do want to talk about both those things if you are willing. 'Cause
Yeah,
I'm
no, that second one, I think, because you just took so much time to like put that into words. We can start there. Ironically, like I've always, and we may have talked about this before, but like I definitely have like imposter syndrome, and like I carry that with me like through most areas of my life, and I don't feel like I'm doing enough, and if I am, and so I minored in women's studies in undergrad, and after I learned about like all of this stuff, like white able-bodied like seemingly hetero men like have done to this world and other people,
mm,
like I felt horrible. I couldn't sleep for like, there was a period of time where I was just like, oh my god, I'm responsible. And so when I try to do things, like I know when I called you, like one of my biggest concerns when I was starting this was like, Kyle, like I want to help indigenous farmers, and like what if I'm just like another white person like colonizing like this by
mhm,
being like, oh, look at Navajo tea and Hawaiian coffee, like come
yeah.
and buy it and we'll make sure that they earn a fair wage. And I was like, I don't want to. So like how do you be this and also try not to harm or like take the place of somebody of color who is trying to do it differently? And so part of it was like talking with you and then Callie Young, who is indigenous, and being like, how do I like keep myself in check through this?
Mm,
Because I need somebody who like is a part of this and sees things differently, like somebody who's Hawaiian, somebody who's Navajo, or not Navajo, but indigenous and um, native. And so how to like, and so I think it's been really helpful to like keep myself in check. And I know I'm not calling all the time, especially because like getting things off the ground, like also included like in the package is like history on like the land and where things came from. And I know we had a conversation early on, and I tried to do a lot of research to be like how much do we really know about the history of
mm,
places, you know? And I feel like that's the difference between like posting a black square on Tuesday once ever and like doing more is like how do I do more as a person, and then how do I create an opportunity for other people to do more in their busy lives?
mm,
And so like if you can buy a bag of coffee, know the farmer like gets a fair wage, learn about Hawaii and how it was colonized and like how it because I think oftentimes people are just like, oh, what I learned in history class is like one day the Hawaiians were like, the USA is so great, can we join? And like, that's not what happened. And so, like, how do we create it as easy of an opportunity for people to be involved and be woke, or just to like do better and know more? Because I believe like once we have that knowledge and awareness of something horrible going on, like we're all going to need to do something with it. And so this gives the people an opportunity to learn and grow and share and like be like, oh my gosh, I just bought this coffee, like did you know like this is what actually happened with the Dole plantations and like the colonization of Hawaii, and like the queen being imprisoned, and like just like learning about the history of these places that are actually like a part of, if you want to say like our country now, like we owe it to ourselves to do that. And so my role, I think now, is just how do we make it easier for people to understand and learn, while keeping our own awareness and keeping ourselves in check, which I try to do both like as a business owner now, which sounds weird to say, but also as just like a person who's like a white able-bodied male, to be like, what did I do today? Like I held the door for a woman like on the way to the store, like what was that about? Like, and just like continuing to question ourselves to make sure, like as an ongoing process and a lifestyle, like are we doing the best we can with the power that we have? So like, yes, I have this power as a white able-bodied male, like what am I doing with it? Like, and just continuing to ask yourself those questions. So I think I like got awoken in like undergrad when I was minoring in women's studies, and like it like has not left me because I'm like so paranoid that like I'm not doing enough. And I think it comes from this like imposter syndrome of like this well-meaning like liberal like white person who's like, oh yes, let's take care of the other people who don't look like us. Like I don't want to be that person. So I don't know. Did
It
that get anywhere close to?
it did. It's just interesting to think about how our life journeys have intertwined. It's like I've only known you like this. You know what I mean? I've only known this version of Spencer, right? So, like to me, I'm just like, yeah, this is exactly who Spencer is. I think a lot of good talking points, but something that really stood out to me is like I do this too often too. I just like have these like grandiose, high moxie level types of like, messages. Shout out to all my mentors in my life who were very impressionable on me. But just like, oh, here's what we need to do, guys. Like this is awesome. But I think where sometimes my message is built on sand, perhaps, is like, okay, like what are the actual actionable steps that we're going to be doing then? You know what I mean? Which I'm pretty obsessed with now in my life. But like something you said was like, just constantly be like evaluating, like asking yourself, like, what was that about? And I don't know, raise your hand if that's part of your daily practice. It's like, okay, so why not? Right. But I think it's in having more of these kinds of conversations, like with people, with yourself, people who are already doing it. Right. I think that's kind of how anyone or anything gets to be the new thing. It's like, I want to be a bodybuilder. You're not gonna go hang out with a bunch of runners. You're gonna go hang out with other people who bodybuild. Okay, well, that's what they're doing. Okay, well, they've already gone through these things. I want to learn from them. But it's the same thing of promise me we find a different phrase of like being woke. Just part of improving our own selves as human beings. Part of evolving is to connect with people who are also committed to that journey, perhaps. So anyway, blah 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 blah. The questioning yourself and like self-evaluation, is that just as simple as just like at night when you're like going to bed, like, okay, here's a little, my routine is this, and part of that routine is like this like self-reflection of the day?
Yeah, I don't, doing it before bed's dangerous because I have OCD, and so I'll like just spend time tearing myself down thinking about like all these things I didn't do before bed. I try to like find, so I always pray or give thanks like when I have a meal. And so I felt like doing it at breakfast, lunch, and dinner, like natural times, like to add it to the routine, or when we're already doing something we are doing now that's a part of our routine, whether it's like brushing our teeth or like whatever you do in the
Mm.
morning or something like that, but tying it to something. So like if you're brushing your teeth, thinking about like what you did during the day or something to it could be as simple as like what's something I did well, what's something that I want to improve on. Or it's just, I think that's a place to start, and then you just start doing it more.
What I mean, already I'm like guilting myself. I'm like, what do you do while you brush your teeth, Kyle? Oh, I just watch TikToks. That's what and it's like, I could use that 2 minutes to like, do that. Yeah. Reflect. Easy. 2 minutes, 2 minutes a day. What is that? That's math a week, whatever. I guess
No,
it's
that's
four minutes a day if I brush my teeth in the morning and the night. It adds up.
Well, and I even think, because so often, like, I've always thought of social media and being like this negative thing that we need to replace with like positive things. But like, if we can follow those people on TikTok who are asking these questions and reflecting, or if we can follow these people on Instagram that are asking these questions, I think of somebody who you and I both know, but like Jane Nelson, like she is probably one of the most like socially aware kids. Like if I had a tenth of what she had when I was in high school, I could probably be doing more. But she, like the stories she posts, like when I go through my day, like going through the stories on my feed, I'm like, what? Like what's going on? Like I didn't know about that. And so it's just like if we can channel our social media to follow some of these people, not that they need to be influencers, but just people who ask these questions, then I think we're going to be compelled to ask the same things. Because if you find out somebody's on death row and like you need to call and do something, then you're gonna be like, oh my gosh, like if I don't do something, like, So I think maybe using TikTok, you could follow those people. Like I think one of the ideas is just to replace and reflect. But I think the other thing could be like there are people on TikTok who are doing these things. Maybe they are the reminder.
Yeah, being more intentional versus I just want to distract myself from whatever it may be. Yeah, using social media as the tool that it is, not letting social media use me as the tool that I am.
Well put.
Yeah, exactly, something like that. But okay, so totally, I appreciate all the background on that information. You carry that into Dismantle Coffee Company. How do you want me to refer to it as?
Yeah, you can call. I call
DCC.
DCC. Yeah, you call it DCC. You call it Dismantle. Ironically, like it took me so long to think of the name, and then one day, because I have Dismantle and Repair tattooed on my wrist, and I was like, I was coming up with so many names, and I was just like, that's what I want to do. Like, I want to break this down. Yeah. And so I don't know that that's what the coffee shop will be called, but I was like, good place. It kind of describes what we're trying to do in terms of like breaking ourselves down to be more vulnerable and get help, but also dismantle like this industry that's disenfranchising a lot of people of color. So yeah, you could refer to it as Dismantle. And then after I add T, I was like, oh well, it doesn't really work.
It's okay. It's all that's part of the journey. You get to work with 2 farmers at this point, and probably more. As part of the dismantling. Can you give us like any kind of background or behind the scenes look? I mean, how does one even go about like finding this person? You just research, call, and what's your relationship like now?
Yeah, like emailing and researching people all over the world, because like I said, I kept coming up with these like white men, and I was like, I don't know that I want to go into business with all these like white men. And so I was emailing people in Jamaica, I was emailing people like wherever coffee grew, I was finding out and like emailing them. And I came across Ralph, who I coincidentally knows Julie and Guy. They're friends, like because the beans come from the south side of the island, and I don't know, I guess they're friends. I mean, you probably know more than I do. You kind of know people.
Yeah, well, I do think they live in a very similar, I don't know how close, but like if the coffee is grown in Ka'u, where most of the coffee is grown, I would assume that's near where Coach Guy guys live. So yeah. I would assume they're kind of like same town, so to speak.
Yeah. Well, and Julie, I think either I don't know if because she's a realtor, right? I don't know if she had worked with them, but anyway, it was kind of small world because I was asking Julie, I was like, hey, can you help me? Like, who do you know? And so anyway, I'm researching all these people. And then I found Ralph, and he was a person of color, and I was like, great. That's like on my scorecard of like trying to
Already.
like woke person. I was like, I need something like, he's a male, he's able-bodied, like I don't. So anyway, I was like, okay, we'll start here. And even then, the farmers that he knew were mostly white, and so it was a really tough decision for me to make because I was like, man, do I like give in? It felt like I was giving in, but I knew that they were earning a fair wage, and I knew Ralph was a part of it. And so I was like, okay, I can start here. And then I have a friend who worked in Haiti for a while in agriculture projects, and he knew a lot of farmers in Haiti who didn't have the business sense or knowledge of how to like get their beans out. And after the horrible natural disaster happened in Haiti, it kind of decimated a lot of the coffee business. And so our next step is going to be to go over to Haiti and try to meet these farmers, give them business skills, try to develop like logistics and infrastructure to get their coffee to us, and then try to sell it from there and make sure they're getting a fair wage so nobody else is in between us. But that's like a whole other skill set that I don't have. And so my friend Bryce, he's in San Diego. And the more we just have the whitest names, the more I like do this research. I'm like, Bryce and Spencer are gonna start a coffee company. It's just like, again, the kind of awareness I have. But that's the next stage. But finding the Navajo tea, I was like researching on Facebook online. Nobody had Navajo tea. Like it just wasn't for sale. Like I couldn't order it online if I wanted to get it to where I was. So I found this like person on Facebook that I'd never met. It was Navajo. Trying to remember what site he originally was on, but it was like he was like, if you go and just mail me money, I'll mail you the tea. And I was like, I don't know. I mean, I'm a trusting person. But so I was like, well, I'll come meet you in New Mexico because my goal is also to like see the farm and like see where these people are living and like understand their livelihood so I can better communicate it to people who are buying. And so we met in Albuquerque in a Kmart parking lot. It was like the underground, and I'm like waiting there for him to come, and he comes in, and he's like, I'm here. And so he goes over and he has they're like these 5-gallon bags, and it looks like, because if you've seen Navajo tea, like it's very like stringy, it's long, it kind of looks like something like hay or something like that. And so it kind of looked like weed is what it looked like. And I've never like been somebody who's like, oh, I'll go behind Safeway and buy weed. Like it's just never, I wouldn't know how to do it. And I would probably be like the narc. They would be like, are you a cop? And so I'm like buying this stuff, and I have all of this stuff in these like Ziploc 5-gallon bags in this parking lot. And so we took a picture together, and it was really cool just like talking with him and getting to know him because he has all this land in the Navajo Nation. He'd somehow gotten more acres, and he wants to start growing coffee, and he wants to grow different types of tea. And it's him and his brother. His name's Sam. And it's just so cool to like be meeting the person who like grew this thing, and like there's nobody in between you and the product. And part of me creating this was like, I want people to be able to go like, that's the person who grew what I'm consuming right now. Because I think Lush does this somewhat. If you buy cosmetics or products from Lush, they'll put the picture of the person who made it. But like, I want to know who grew the product that I'm going to invest in. So that was really cool for me, and that kind of like lit my fire even more. And I was like, man, we need to make this more available to people. And that'll transition over to the coffee shop, because I want to have these big murals of the farmers who make what we're producing in the coffee shop, so people can look up and be like, oh, that's who grew this coffee, that's who grew this tea. So you can like have that much more of a connected experience with what you're consuming instead of just like, oh, this is good Starbucks. Like, I don't know. I don't think Starbucks knows who made your cup of coffee.
Sure. You
But
know, you can almost deepen that connection by just like you know, you had mentioned the farmer's brother's name is Sam. Like you could just be like, you know, this, can I get a size small? It's like, okay, our size small is called the Sam. Like that's who, blah, blah, blah. Or you can name the coffee,
yeah,
you know, like, oh, what's like, you guys have Americanos? Like, yes, our Americano's called, you know, this, you know, person's name, just a little homage to the people who grow the coffee. And they're like, oh, okay, you know. You know, then they, you know, it just takes a little bit of time to kind of wrestle through the, you know, like initial, you know, why doesn't it just say Americano? Like, why does it say
right,
someone's name? Like, you know, and then,
yeah,
but like we've talked about before, as soon as people get it, like, oh, got it. Like, I totally makes sense.
yeah.
Cool. And then just like, so besides getting your tea in the back of a Kmart,
Oh yeah.
does work, how do you get your beans from like Hawaii now? Is it just like a call email process? Or I mean, I don't think you've gotten to go and see the coffee farm yet, but you
Yeah.
probably have emailed and called and you know, whatever, and probably like
Yes.
any other thing.
So I do that. I was supposed to go. So when I was going to go in February, I was like, I'm going to go meet Ralph. He's going to go. We're going to go to the farms. And it's also like trying to find a farmer who's like bought into what you're doing too. And like, yeah, you could tell my story. Like you could tell what I'm about. Because there are some people who are like, here's my product. Like I don't want to. This isn't anymore than just here are my beans. And so yeah, they ship it just. I mean, I got this 100 pounds of coffee like via FedEx, and he got that. I got it. I opened it up. I was like, oh my gosh, here it is. And that was pretty, I don't know, it wasn't the same experience as meeting Sam in a Target parking lot, but like it was all right. I'm excited to go over to see, 'cause I was on Oahu, but I've been to Oahu, I've been to Kauai, and I haven't been to the Big Island yet. And so I'm really excited because I know that that'll like deepen my experience that much more.
I want to pause you because I feel like this is something that you'd really appreciate, whereas other people would not appreciate it. So there seems to be like this, I don't want to call it a new movement or if it was an existing movement, but I'm guilty of this too. I call my beautiful home island the Big Island, but I guess there's like a big push now of people just saying like, it's called Hawaii. Like, let's just call it Hawaii. Like, because if we keep calling it the Big Island, like we're not gonna get off of that. You know what I mean? Hey, now that I'm telling you, it makes me more committed for me to keep doing it myself. It's so easy. It's easier.
Yeah.
There's a Big Island. It's like, oh, okay, got it. I know which one that is. But when you say Hawaii, it comes with like the, what? Isn't that the state? Like, why is that so confusing? Blah, blah, blah. But not just my father or my aunties. Anyway, a lot of family had just been like, okay, like we gotta start calling it Hawaii.
Yeah.
Okay, so now you know, that's where you get your that's where you get your beans from. Hey, and the other thing too is it's probably not going to be a big deal for like 90% of people, but now you know. I mean, hopefully you're better for it.
It's authenticity, and I want to do things the way, because I think the words we use are really important, and if the people who should be choosing what they're called are the people who were, it's their land and they were there first. Because my brother told me a little bit, because what's the word for mouth breather, or like is referred to like for white people?
Haole.
And so like when I'm talking with my brother, who is like maybe not my biggest like Hawaiian interaction since I've started this company, but like I mean, a lot of the white people who are there, like, I mean, unless they're invested in the culture, like don't know. So I appreciate that, because I think that that's huge. And like part of me and selfishly adventuring into this is like so I can learn, because after I went to the is it Iolani Palace?
Iolani Palace, yeah.
And like I went through this tour. I can't even tell you. I had like this like epiphany and like this like really deep experience, like being in the room that Queen Lilakwane Did I say that right?
Liliu o Kalani.
Ili Wokwani. Again, like being in that room that she was locked in, like it was just so like deep for me. And I was like, man, like we need to be doing a better job of like learning and like investing in this. And as I went through, so on our Instagram, you know, I went through like every monarch from her back to like King Kamehameha. And like it was so, I learned so much. And even like before they were there or before the islands were united, like I was like, there were people here before like native Hawaiians, you know, and like learning about the Polynesians and like who came there and why did they come there. So I think names are important, but also like this brand is built on like authentic history, so we need to have these conversations. So
yeah, absolutely sweet. Lilo just came in the room again. She likes to do this thing where she sits by my feet.
I do want to make time because well, and hopefully when I get to go over there, I'll get to see the farms. But I do want to make time because part of like what we're talking about is like making these little changes to like live more authentically and aware and selflessly. And because you've ever since you've started, like I get the quotes now on my Instagram, which I think is like super cool and influences my life. Because the whole social media piece, like when I was doing the monarchs on this Dismantle Coffee, is like, how do you make time to like come up with this content and how do you choose and like how do you like, I don't know, there's just so much to try to like, such a big idea to put it down back into like the Iron Man thing. Like how do you like, is it just like when you're looking, this sticks out to you and you're like, here you go world, like what is the process for you like in since creating this?
The elevator pitch version, the short and sweet version is that I have this weird goal to try to bring up Brene Brown every podcast. So for good reason. There just came to be a certain point in time where this thought just I could not stop obsessing about it, similar to like what you were talking about. And the thought was like her quote was live that kind of love so you can give that kind of love. For my version is I need to live aloha so that I can give aloha. And I think there was just so many moments in my life where I was like, oh, like social media guy posts a quote, like I could do that, or like, oh, like I'm funny and charismatic and I could talk to people, like I could do a podcast, like, and I just could not stop talking about it, and I could never start living it and doing it. And I was just so sick and fed up with myself. And that quote was something I just started to obsess about. Like, I gotta live aloha so I can give aloha. Like I truly, genuinely care about like putting aloha out into the world. I am assuming that the world will not ever be like, okay, we're good on aloha. Like we don't have to have any more aloha in the world. You know, like we're good. I think that's just going to be a resource that just is needed on the day-to-day for all kinds of reasons. For those people who need it desperately, for those people who are giving it out, and potentially need to be replenished, for those people who need to learn about it and need to put a word or phrase into their life to define something they've always felt, perhaps. To get to your question and specific example, but the quotes, part of the gig was living it and like just do something, right? So that's part of the thing. A practice. So we talked about Janessa Mass earlier. She was like, Brad, you got to journal. So I was like, okay, like I'm going to start journaling. So I have this app, which some people were like, that's not real journaling, but part of the app, shout out Reflecting. Maybe you can sponsor this podcast. Let's go. Part of the app is, it's like, here's your like quote or daily challenge of the day. Here's all these things. and so the quote, there's like a section of there where it just has different quotes, and you can kind of filter like self-love or depression or just different categories that you can sort of like attach yourself onto. So there's times where I'll just post like whatever the daily quote that it gives me, because I'm just like, that speaks meaning into my life, and I'm if it did that for me, that possibly could do that for someone else. Screenshot, post, boom, there's content out there. So part of it was just like the machine needs to run. Like, let's go, like let's start putting stuff out there. And so that's a huge. I think the primary piece of it all is just like, I need to start doing stuff. Like, I can't sit on the sidelines anymore. I need to throw myself in the arena. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I wish it was something more like intentional. Like, I sat for 365 hours and decided on 365 quotes that I was going to post every single day. But it's really not that. It's just like, let's just live aloha daily, and let's just share it, you know? And I think that's pretty much the mission of LiveAloha365 at this point, is just to live it and give it, you know? And I think there's all kind of ways that we can do that. We can do that by, you know, in long form, by having a podcast kind of conversation and exposing people to Dismantle Coffee Company. I think we can do it in short form with like little Instagram stories where we just post a quote real quick, you know. But I think the bottom line is, to echo kind of similar stuff that you were saying earlier, is I need to do more. I need to do, there is more to be done, and sitting on the sidelines, that's not acceptable with me anymore. So, you know, I think the content expresses itself in different ways. Like, I posted that funny video about weight loss, which, you know, hopefully, well, it has brought smiles and laughs to people's faces. I've gotten, you know, a few texts and calls already, like, don't let that man hit you, or whatever. And saying like, whatever, like that's great, you know, and like, that's funny. And I hope, and it's good for me too. That's part of me living aloha with my own self. But it can also be as simple as a quote, or, you know, other content we have coming out soon. You know, I want to do more food type of, you know, maybe more like medium form or medium length content. I can post it on YouTube or Instagram, and just about places around Portland, you know, wherever I'm eating or wherever I go, you know, just like, hey, look, this is this food place, and here's what I think about it, you know. And so I think it's more of just like, because I was wrestling with that for a while. Like, well, I need to know exactly like what it is, like my plan is. Like, I was just so obsessed over the plan that it was getting in the way of the work, you know? So at this point, January 4th, I am just trying to dive into the work, and the plan, and smoothing everything out in my mind is gonna come after, I think.
Well, and it's like kind of this idea that, like, as you sharpen like your own tool, then like all of the work you do and what you build like will be that, because of the work that you've done in like sharpening yourself. And I think that's what I've appreciated about you, and why I've wanted to like bounce things off of you, is because like you found a way to like do this in your own way, like creating the Volleyball Academy, and then like just who you are and the things that you bring up. And so it's like, just you doing things is it, kind of like you said, like just you going to lunch, like you're naturally going to end up somewhere, and you're going to naturally end up influencing people because you're there having lunch and you're who you are. And so I think that that's so cool, because it's not very defined, because you can't just say like, this is how I'm exactly going to do it. But just because of who you've developed yourself into and what you believe in, like you're going to do it just by living your life. And so I think that that's really cool. And it also role models for other people. Like, how would I do this? Like, well, this is what Kyle does. He does this really like silly, funny thing, or like he did this thing today. And it's like, oh, cool. Like, you're a safe role model for both like the kids in the volleyball club, but also for the world now.
Yeah. Awesome. I appreciate you saying that out loud. I sometimes, even though maybe I know that in my heart, I don't let myself hear it from myself, I guess. So I appreciate you saying it out loud. I don't want this conversation to end. So what I'm going to say is we need to pick this conversation up in the next time we have another podcast, because I do have to go at this point. But is it okay if I post links to Dismantle Coffee in the YouTube description or whatever?
Yeah, tag our Instagram.
Awesome.
And
Cool.
get it out there. We have I know, because you said what, right? So I can clarify, you have Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook.
We have a website, and then those 3 social medias.
Okay, that's what I thought. Yeah, I mean, we're not up to your level yet, but yeah, feel free to get on the IG. But
Sweet.
I appreciate you extending and thinking of me, or thinking of Dismantle, and also for like being an advisor and being somebody that I can go to throughout this, because I think like you are a part of like what I'm building, because like of our relationship and who you are. So you're also a part of this. So I'm glad that I can participate on your court, if you will. And yeah, no, I'm going to keep following, and I'll keep promoting. And when we pick this conversation up, we'll kind of update where you're at and where I'm at, and see how we can make this place better.
Absolutely. I think that's what whether the world realizes it or not, that's what we're gonna do, baby. That's what we're gonna do. Spencer, I appreciate your time. Appreciate your thoughtfulness in your Dismantle Coffee Company and your life. I'm excited for the next time.
Look forward to it. Thanks, Kyle.
Shoots. Aloha.
Hilo's such a rainy old town. I listen to the rain come down. Don't it fall so free?